Hello and welcome to the 50th episode of Extraordinary with me, James Wallis, the podcast that shines a light on ordinary people who have gone on to do and see extraordinary things. And in this very special milestone episode, I'm joined by none other than Anthony Smith, the trailer editor to the biggest podcaster in Europe, Steven Bartlett.
I found myself going into acting and I almost became a bit of a child actor, so I went quite far with that. I was doing a lot of theatre and it was something that we were taking very seriously. I ended up going to a quite prestigious acting school.
Despite making a career and a living behind the camera, Anthony was destined for a life in front of it. Anthony tells me about his love for film and how he started his own production company straight after uni, landing gigs with the NHS and Asda.
Reality of it is I'm not a business owner. I can't be that. The idea of going out and making sales in that front, I hated.
He also reveals how it was his mental health that forced him to make huge life-changing decisions before landing the job with Steven Bartlett.
He got to this point where I just really wasn't happy and I don't know what it was. I just didn't want to get out of bed. And then it just got to a point where eventually I sort of started taking these questionnaires about like anxiety and depression and things like that. And it turned out that I was pretty severely suffering from depression.
I love this conversation so much, and you'll know exactly why once you finish listening. Anthony has the best personality, he's got the biggest heart, and he also loves Disney, which is always a plus. If you enjoy this episode, please don't forget to leave a rating or a review from wherever you're listening from, and if you haven't subscribed, if you could subscribe, that really helps too, because it just helps keep the podcast going and growing, and it means the world to me. That being said, and without further ado, enjoy the show. Anthony, thank you so much for having me today. Good to be here. Good to see you in person. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm very well. I'm a busy day, but sort of going through it now.
You're a busy man, but before we get into the nitty gritty, tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Anthony. I am the trailer editor for Steven Bartlett's The Diary of a CEO. So my role is to essentially create those 1 minute 30 trailers that go out on socials the morning every time the episode comes out.
And for anyone, and I'm sure people listening to this podcast, I hope, have also listened to Steven Bartlett's Diary of a CEO. It's officially the biggest podcast in Europe, right?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. Yeah. I hope so. No, it's definitely. It keeps growing and growing and growing. The listens and the views that we see the stats from are incredible. I think we're one of, if not the biggest in Europe, especially in our category as well. And it just continues to soar, really.
And I think why I'm so interested in you is because the trailers are so epic. They are just like Hollywood blockbuster style, like trailers. Did you intend for them to be like that big? Like, we're going to come on to all the trailer stuff later on in the podcast, but I'm just interested right off the bat, like, did you expect to be here making trailers for the biggest podcast creator in Europe?
If I'm honest, if I got asked that before I joined, probably not. I've not come from a podcast background. And for me, whenever I used to think about what I was going to be doing as an editor, be working in trailers for films or TV campaigns and stuff like that, which is what I was sort of leading to in my last job. But then when I came across this and when I spoke to Jack and he set me like a task to make a miniature trailer for an existing episode. And I had a lot of fun with it, and it was incredible to see what we could actually do and how far we could take it. So now it's gotten to a place where I'm like very happy that I'm the trailer editor for podcasts, that especially for podcasts where we can keep pushing the boundaries of how far we take it.
And you deserve every success. I actually had the good fortune of meeting Steven not that long ago, and I said, I'm interviewing Anthony on my podcast, and he said, that man's the shit. He's going to dish all the dirt. So before we carry on, I'm expecting lots of dirt to be dished, but we're here to talk about you, not about the podcast or Steven per se. You're in the spotlight this time. And we've had good kind of a few chats before, meeting face to face today. And I'm so intrigued by your story, your childhood. You're very inspirational in terms of what you've overcome and what you've seen. So thank you once again for being here. So looking back at your childhood, what do I need to know that brings you here today?
I think, to be honest, when I was younger, I think I was always going to be in the media industry. And when it first started, I was always a massive attention seeker as a kid. Um, I was that child who always wanted to compete for the attention of his parents compared to the older brother. And so I found myself going into acting, and I almost became a bit of a child actor. So I went quite far with that. I was doing a lot of theatre, and it was something that we were taking very seriously. I ended up going to a quite prestigious acting school where I would do acting, I would do singing, I would do tap, ballet, street, which comes out every so often at the Christmas parties. But yeah, so that was really where everything was going towards, was to become an actor. And then it was around that time where it was GCSE hitting, and I was doing GCSE drama, and I was also doing GCSE media studies. And there was just one day where I was about to go on stage to perform my GCSE performance, and I just got this sudden stage fright, and it was almost like, I can't go out there and do this. I really don't want to do it. And I was freaking out. I did do it in the end. I sort of pushed myself out, and thankfully I got a good grade with it. But I left that performance thinking, I'm never going to go on stage again. That's something I'm never going to do. But at the time, I found myself sort of writing and directing short films in media studies, because as you'll find, for a lot of people who do media studies, half the class are eager and want to become famous directors in Hollywood. The other half are doing it because it's a bit of a DOS. So what you find out doing is, if you're the passionate one, you're doing a lot of their work. So that's what I found I was doing, and it just turned out I absolutely loved doing it. So then that sort of took that natural switch, which then led me to university and stuff.
That is so true. I'm just thinking back to my A levels. I personally didn't do media studies because I was told it was a DOS, to be totally frank with you, even though I really wanted to do it. And I've said to my friends recently, I was like, imagine if I did media studies A level, I might have gone on to do production at uni, and then I would have had a completely different career. But I'm interested in kind of, it sounds like PTSD you've got from that stage experience. But was there any sort of influences? Because I'm fascinated by child actors and people that want to be on stage as a kid, because it's a really vulnerable thing to do. And I kind of get the argument that actually in your earlier years you don't have that sense of fear. You're not as vulnerable. Maybe you develop vulnerabilities in adolescence and into your teenage years. Were you extremely confident? Were you extroverted? Was there any, did you have friends and family that were pushing you onto the stage, or were you just loving life and being I've got images of you being the class clown and wanting to be on stage the whole time?
No, one thing that my parents have never done, they've never pushed me for, I'm really, apart from maybe my cousin, who's younger than me, there's no one in my family that does what I do, who moved towards media. But my parents were, I think, I don't know if it's a second child thing or what, but it's almost like your first child is the one where it's we want to do everything right. So we can make sure that they get the best education we can possibly get, and we'll do everything. We'll bring in a tutor, we'll do it. And then with me, it was almost let him see what he can do. And it sort of shows really, I'm more of that creative side, whereas my brother's not. And what my parents have now sort of raised is someone who's quite passionate about everything he gets involved in. very passionate when it comes to debates. So me and my dad will have like 3-hour debates about politics, about schooling systems, about jobs, about cost of living crisis, stuff like that. Whereas my brother's sort of more, he just wants that easier life, so he won't engage in that side. So I think by doing that, that's what they've created, is someone who's just really passionate about life and everything. And then going into school, I think it was probably a lot of it was this like complex of wanting to seek attention, really, and the way I got it was to try and be funny, was to try and be caring. My mum always tells me the story of when we was leaving. It was the final day of year 6, and the boys was on one side of the hall and the girls were on the other side on the hall on a bench singing. I think it was Lean on Me. And like some of the girls over there were crying and things like that. So I got off from the bench and went over to them and gave them all a hug and things like that. And it's like, I've always sort of had that sort of passionate side of me that I want to care, and I care deeply about people. And maybe that was part of this whole like attention seeking thing that I craved wanting to be around people. I wanted to make people happy all the time. And I definitely think that then led obviously into acting, and then eventually led into what I'm doing now as well.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes sense, in that you've spent your whole life almost storytelling, going from like, and I also think like performers in general, or anyone that spends time in front of the camera, they have to understand like the human psyche and human emotions for them to sort of do the job that they do. And I'm always interested in people, directors, producers, editors as well, because they are so in tune with like how the human mind works. And since I've been doing a podcast, I've become more interested in psychology, not just because of the topics and the content, but when I'm editing, like there are certain things and certain tricks that I know more than anyone about, cliffhangers, the music, like crescendos, like just drama and flickers on screen that keeps kind of an audience engaged. I think that there's so much psychology to that people don't even realize, it's a science and an art.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and the weird thing is, I don't think it's psychology that we've learned from school or from textbooks or anything like that. I'm not very. I would probably say I wasn't very academic. I'd done well in school, but I'd done well on the creative subjects, and that's where I sort of led to. When it came to things like maths and science, it's like I still can't do maths. I still can't do science. I was put in the subject where like the highest grade you can get is a C and stuff like that. So so I was sort of written off in that sense. But when it came to things like English and sort of reading the books, and then everything I sort of learned was obviously from watching films and documentaries, and I think that's where I sort of learned that psychology side to it. And it's probably more from growing up, how reacting to how I felt and how friends felt and how family felt when I was watching films. My mum loves watching films, and she's got like such a wide range of films that she loves and genres that she loves. So it's sort of interesting because my brother and my dad always went off to watch West Ham, and me and my mum would stay at home and we'd just watch films, and it was mainly Disney films. And it'd be interesting to see.
What was your favorite Disney film?
As a kid, Peter Pan. I was obsessed with pirates, and weirdly enough, I was on the villain side. And then now, one of my favorite films of all time is Beauty and the Beast.
Iconic.
It is iconic. What I think I love most about it now is like, I think that was probably the first film where Disney always made films for kids that adults would go and watch. And near the sort of this, I don't know if this is my theory or not, or whether I read it, but near the Disney, what they call the Disney Renaissance period, which sort of kicked off with The Little Mermaid and then Beauty and the Beast, that's when they started making films for adults that kids could watch. So they sort of flipped that around, because I guess the psychology of it is it's not the kids that go to the cinema. The kids might want to go to the cinema. It's the adults that go to the cinema. So market towards the adults. If the adults love it, they're going to bring their kids to watch this film. And so from that, that's the psychology, and that's what you sort of learn.
I was just about to say, like, even that kind of nugget of gold, the Disney Renaissance era, which I think you so eloquently put. I mean, stuff like that is like, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating, like the whole media industry. And again, like, and I'm so interested in people like you because as a kid, rightly or wrongly, well, definitely wrongly, I was socialised at school to not pursue a career in the creative industries. And I was actually told as a GCSE student to never pursue anything in the arts because I was so crap at it. I have like my art teacher held up a piece of pottery, and granted it was fucking awful, but he was like, everyone put your hand up if you think James should get an F or a U. Like, and I was just told at parents' evening, like, James isn't creative, like he can't do it. But there's so much more to art and film and culture and TV and whatever than like the making, the like actual like painting and drawing. Because to be fair, I can't paint or draw, but maybe I could have done media studies or studied film. And I just think it's so interesting that you genuinely have a deep passion for the screen. Film and TV, and it's amazing. Was there a particular part in your kind of academic career when you were studying media studies that you loved? Like, was it the production? Was it the editing? Was it the development? Was it the creative? Like, which part of it appealed to you most?
It's all went through stages, really. So at the start, the dream was pretty much like everyone who does media studies dream is to become a famous film director. The dream, obviously, somehow was to go to university to study film, and then straight to LA, work for maybe 2 months as a waiter, and in the meantime get signed, and then in about 6 months' time directing a new like Marvel film or something like that.
Were you ever going to pick up being in front of the camera ever again? Was there a little bit of you that was like, oh, do you know what? I would love to be in front of the camera.
No.
Okay. You were on a path behind the camera.
Yeah, I think so. It was. It's because it's just something that I found that I thought I loved acting, and I think what it was more I wanted to love acting, and the reality of it is, and it's like with any industry, if you want to become an actor, it's a very hard graft, and I think if I kept pursuing it, I would just have a normal job by now. I still wouldn't be an actor because when the hard graft came across, I didn't love it enough. I'd done ballet, I'd done tap, I'd done singing, but I didn't love doing that. So I think when I saw this chance of being behind the camera as a writer, so I'd write a lot and then I'd direct it and then I'd edit it again because you're making up for the people who didn't want to do anything. Which then sort of sometimes continued through into uni. That's what used to be my dream and then when I graduated from university, I co-founded a video production company with my ex-business partner called Joe, and it was me and him, and he took on the role of cinematography, which is so the person who frames the shots, shoots a shot, gets all the mise en scène involved, that sort of thing. And he was the producer, and my role was to come up with the ideas, write the ideas, direct the shoot, and then edit it. And that's what we had to do because we didn't have enough money to hire editors or to hire any script writers. But our passion was to try and create narrative-driven video for smaller businesses in Lancashire. And
so this was straight after uni. You weren't going to go and get a job at a production company. You weren't going to sort of go freelance. You went straight into entrepreneurialism and be like, right, I'm going to set up a business. Is that right? Like, was there something at what point of your university career were you like, I'm just going to do this by myself?
To be honest, I was sort of not in a bad way at all, but I was sort of led to it by Joe. Joe was very much just I didn't really know what to do, and it sort of got to a position actually where 2 weeks before I was to finish uni, my granddad passed away, and he was like one of my best mates. I saw him all the time, and so I sort of left. I finished everything uni wise, but then I went home, and like that whole thing just dropped. Um, and then yeah, Joe would just message me and be like, "Shall we take this company seriously?" And sort of at the time, it was like, sure. Like I don't really know what else to do. You're sort of This is the thing with media, and I think this is where a lot of students struggle, but need to realize it is you don't go to college or you don't go to university, do a course in anything media, and walk out. Most people won't walk out knowing exactly what they want to do, the exact path to follow, and the exact job that they want. It just don't happen. Especially for film, you're not going to walk out and start working on feature films. You're behind a line of thousands of people who have been grafting for years before that. Sometimes going to uni can almost be a bit of a hindrance because there's people who started early, working their way up, and you sort of need a bit of that luck through it. So I sort of had that fear that I wasn't gonna, and it's probably what I now know what is imposter syndrome. I didn't know what it was until I actually started working here, and like Steve was mentioning it on the podcast, and guests were talking about it, and I finally understood. Oh shit, that's me. I was sort of led really into that, and it was one of the best decisions I made. And yeah, that sort of sparked that journey of becoming like thinking more of an entrepreneur and being self-employed.
Did you enjoy being a business owner? Like, is that something that appealed at the time to you? Drumming up business over sitting in a gallery or studio editing?
I think the idea of wanting to be an entrepreneur appeals to a lot of people in the dream side of it. So the chance of working for yourself, you choose your holidays, you choose your hours, you do whatever you want, you own your business, no one can tell you what to do. That I only thought about that side, and that's the only side I knew of starting a company. I didn't do any business studies or anything like that. Reality of it is I'm not a business owner. I can't be that. The idea of going out and making sales in that front, I hated. It took away the love at some point of editing and directing, because it came about the client more, and came for the client, and then obviously make sure you're doing your own marketing, and then you're doing networking, and then you're also worried about your finances coming through. And because I was terrified of loans, we didn't take out any loans for the company. So any money we made from clients, that's what we'd use to fund equipment. So we was living on literally no money for a while, and so.
Did the business earn any money?
Yeah, it grew. At first, it sort of grew slowly, but Joe was really smart. We were together. We worked well in that sense that, and it taught me a very good lesson, and one that I still use today, which is don't let money dictate how you live your life. And it's something that maybe if I just got a job straight out of uni, I wouldn't have that. And I could be a completely different person, maybe not as nice of a person, or be in a job that I love or anything like that. Because I know people who sort of chase money and their expectations never met by the salary they earn. They always want that extra 10% more. They'll always go, no matter how high they'll get, they'll look upon someone else or another industry or an extra sum of money. Whereas because we didn't have money growing this business, we had to learn we had to learn where to buy the food the cheapest and what can we do with it. So this is why I love to cook, because every meal was like a blank canvas. If you wanted it to taste nice, you had to invest in seasoning, and you had to cook it that way. I didn't go out buying like any sort of designer clothes, or we weren't doing anything like that. So yeah, so we had to learn how to. I mean, we weren't broke and we weren't like.
How were you living?
So me and my girlfriend at the time, she had a job, and something that obviously I'll always be thankful for. She helped out a lot in terms of like with bills and stuff like that, and it sort of got to a point where any money I would earn at the start, we would sort of use it to either treat ourselves or to pull it towards something. And then it did eventually get to the point where me and Joe started taking a monthly allowance out, and it got to near the end when I left. It was getting to the point where we were taking a decent wage from it, and it is a really proud memory, really, how that company just grew from absolutely nothing, no loans, no help, really. It was just me and Joe working our ass off, marketing to the right people. We won like best new business in Lancashire. And by the end of it, we was working for the NHS. We worked for Asda. We worked for the army. We were like the direct partners for a bunch of marketing agencies in Manchester and in Preston, and was doing shoots in London.
How did you get those gigs? Were you getting jobs from like advertising agencies, creative agencies? Like how were you marketing yourself?
So initially, for Asda, that came through the university, and then how we got something like the NHS would be, I think, as we had to pitch for the NHS, and that was always a scary moment because we recognised some of the companies that we were going against, and we were sort of all waiting to sort of pitch to them and stuff like that. And we were shocked that we got it because we're like, this one has this much experience, this one has this amount of team, and it was just me and Joe, and we was like, so when it came to the pitch, it was literally just sort of throw away what we had and try and tell them the story of how we're gonna impact them. And the project was to make a 25-minute narrative film about a patient's journey with dementia. And that film would then be cut into chapters and shown in different lessons to nurses and doctors and carers in dementia care, because they wanted to raise the standard of dementia care. And in the end, they sold it on to other NHS trusts. They were getting accredited by leading specialists in dementia care and stuff like that in the States and stuff like that. And it was perfect for us because it was a short film, and we tested out new techniques. So like one of my favorite things ever was the premise of it. This is going to be a tangent. The premise of the idea we came up with was a young woman goes to pick up her children at school, and then she suddenly blacks out, wakes up, and she's in hospital. And she can't find her children. And the entire time she's trying to escape from this hospital. And the doctors keep pushing her back. They don't give her the answers. And during this whole care, they're sort of not neglecting her, but they're doing what was the standard and what a lot of hospitals were doing from the surveys they got back, which is what we worked into the film. And the whole idea is that we don't know that she's a dementia sufferer, because she's this young woman. She's really confused. She has no idea why she's there, what's going on. She thinks she's been kidnapped. And then eventually she's put in a home. And there's this final shot at the end, which we constructed with the last bits of our budget that we took out of a big chunk out of our wages. And we built a set for a room in my flat. And we created so she was doing her makeup in the mirror or combing her hair or something like that, or writing in her diary, and then she looks up and she sees her older self in the mirror. And the way we done it was we had our young actress Rosanna, who was incredible, and then we also brought in an older actress, cut a hole, put a mirror frame in there, and we got a mirror in each other's moves. so it was all done in camera there and then. There was no VFX because we couldn't afford VFX. And that was one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite ever shots. One of my favorite ever moments. How we created this little set in our room.
Can anyone listening go and find it online, or is it hidden?
The actual film, I don't think you can see that actual film unless you want to either pay a lot of money to the NHS or email the NHS.
Changing gears slightly, you then left the company in 2019, which was only a few years ago now. What were the driving forces or the triggers behind making that decision?
Oof. Okay. It was one of those where you never realise until it's a bit too late just how many factors have impacted you, and ultimately it got to a point where me and my ex broke up, and she lived up north, southern land. All my family were down south, and I think there was a massive part of me that always missed my family, to the extent where I would more or less be driving down maybe twice every other weekend to go and see them, which is this 5.5 hour journey there and back to go and see them. And I think ultimately it all basically got to this point where I just really wasn't happy. And I don't know what it was. I just didn't want to get out of bed. I would text Joe and say I was ill and stuff. Whereas reality was I was just laying in bed and I felt lazy, and I was just like, I'm just really tired. But I would text Joe and be like, can we have our meet at 4 instead of 10 or 11? Just not feeling very well. And then it just got to a point where eventually I sort of started taking these questionnaires about like anxiety and depression and things like that. And it turned out that I was, according to the questionnaire, pretty severely suffering from depression and anxiety. And that they recommend I go and see a doctor straight away. So I went to go and see a doctor. They confirmed it. They put me on pills. I can't remember which ones they were. Diazepam, I think, something like that. So I was taking them. They basically turned me into like this weird zombie type for me, bearing in mind my whole life has been this attention-seeking kid who just wants to love and be kind of show like I was passionate about this thing. So then suddenly have no emotion and not caring what people think or say, and it's just switched off. I found that really difficult, and it just really wasn't working. And so eventually I went to go and get help, and speak to a counsellor, and the counsellor really just sort of opened my eyes on what I think my problems were. And then it all just built up. The breakup happened, and literally within 24 hours, I was packed up. We'd bought a house the year before. You
and the ex?
Me and the ex. Which my current girlfriend hates because now she don't get any stamp duty relief. I wish I knew that. I never got taught anything like this. I wish I knew how to buy a house. So then when this thing's happened, I would have been like, you know, we're not on the best path. Maybe we shouldn't do that. But yeah, so within 24 hours, I'd left the company. I'd left that house. I'd left that entire life up north. Like the mates I made up north, that got all left behind, and I just went down south. And yeah, it sort of ended very abruptly. It was very emotional for me and like for Joe.
Did you feel like it was a breakup with Joe as well? Like, did he see it coming? Was the writing on the wall?
Weirdly enough, so with me and my ex, we were having problems for ages before that. We actually broke up in the January, and this happened in June or July. we broke up in the January, and then we tried to make it work between that time, and that entire time was spent trying too hard to make it work. So I think by that point, the emotions were sort of decided. With Joe, that was more of a raw feeling at that moment in time, because that was new. We'd spoken about it a bit before. This was probably the depression side when I was trying to figure all that out. But yeah, it was a big shock to him. He was really supportive, bless him, but it did hit him hard. And I didn't actually see him for maybe 2 years, and then he moved down to London. He lives in London now, and we met up, and we sort of talked it through. And like of course, I understand where he came from. It's almost like your business partner's there, and suddenly they're not. And then from my eyes, the way I sort of justified it was the work that we were going wasn't work that I was relatively needed for at that time. We could find someone to come in, but I think ultimately I just needed to get out there because it was getting too bad.
And when you realised that it was bad and you went to see, I'm assuming, a GP or a doctor who you
At first,
did you go into that GP's appointment knowing that it was a mental health issue? Because obviously, from what I know, some of the symptoms of depression is like chronic fatigue, just tiredness basically, or just like not wanting to do anything. But that could be also a medical thing, like a physical medical thing. Were you aware of your mental state at the time, or was it kind of a shock to you when they said you've actually got severe depression?
I don't think it was a shock, but I don't think I believed it at the same time. This was something I always struggled with, was I think for someone at my age, it was sort of getting to a point where every time I'd go on social media, there would be posts from people talking about depression and anxiety and things like that. And this is going to sound horrible, but in part of me in my head is some of this a bit of an attention thing? Is it like if you and I always got confused because I never wrote anything like that on social. I didn't want anyone to know how I was feeling. I'd done the questionnaire because it was in private and it was online, and going to the GP, that took some going, and then I sort of delayed going to the therapist, and I don't even know these people. I still didn't really want to tell them. I don't think I did tell my mum and dad.
You didn't tell them?
Not at first. Yeah, not at first, because it's just, you just sort of, you feel like, nah, I don't think it is. And you also think they're going to think what you think, which is he's just being a bit of an attention seeker. It's a state of mind.
And what year was this? 2019?
The end of 2018, October 2018, I think, was when it finally happened. And then the therapy started in January 2019.
And was that through the NHS, or did you go privately?
I went privately in the end, just because with the NHS, it was you're put on a waiting list. And it was just getting to the point where I was just like, I can't be on this waiting list anymore. Like, I don't want to be on these tablets. I need to talk to someone. I didn't feel like I had anyone to talk to. Because I was up north, and my family and my school friends and my lifelong friends were all down south. I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone. And even with your close friends, you always feel like there is always a little bit of an agenda behind it, or you don't know what they're going to say or how they're going to treat you afterwards, or why are they saying this. Like, if I spoke to someone, would they have their own little hidden agenda, whether they want to or not, on how to make you react to something. So it just got to a point where I eventually told my mum and dad, and they were like, okay, let's get you in to see a therapist, which happened straight away. And then I was speaking to someone for 3 months, I think, in the end.
Wow. Quite a short period amount of time, actually, in the grand scheme of things. I mean, I've been seeing a therapist for over 2 years now. So, like, I can't get rid of him. I keep thinking maybe I should end it, but then every session I'm just like, no, I really enjoy it.
I wish... I think it's one of those things where I genuinely think in an ideal world, I think every single person should have a therapy session every week.
Oh, 100%. I think it's life-changing. It's changed my life, like, hands down. What things did you learn about yourself? Like, it's because I struggle to articulate the benefits of therapy. When my friends say to me, and at first I was quite shy about it as well. I didn't go because I had anxiety or depression. I went because I wanted to experience it, if I'm being brutally honest. And like, yeah, we've all got shit to talk about, to your point. Everyone should have therapy because every human being has a very complicated life, I think. But it's really hard. I find it really hard to conjure up a way of explaining why and how it is so beneficial. So I just wonder if you can shine a light on that. Is there one thing or some things or a particular framework or a model that was explained to you that has like changed the way you think about things?
I think it made me realize just how much of a people pleaser I am. Which ironically...
Do you know why you're a people pleaser?
No, I don't actually know why I'm a people pleaser. I think it's just something I've always had in me, part of it. I think it's because like it's one of those, like, if you went down to family, I've got such an amazing... We've got a huge family and everyone loves each other. Everyone sees each other. You know, we do Christmas Day on one side of the family, Boxing Day with the other side of the family because there's too many. We do big family holidays. So there was never any sort... Well, what I don't think is any sort of trauma there. I think part of it might have been growing up in school. You know, I was sort of... you know, I was in with a few different groups of people, and I probably found myself adapting my personality to be with the football lot, and then as opposed to the smarter lot. And because I wasn't very smart, I tried to adapt my personality so they would sort of welcome me in that front. And I think part of it was just always this idea that I sort of struggle in terms of learning through traditional means, and it's sort of the same. And this is sort of what leads to the imposter syndrome. Is like same with editing. I was never taught how to edit, so.
But you're not. Didn't you study it at uni? No.
There
was no like editing module.
No.
Really?
So.
God, I've got such a long way to go. Fuck. I was hoping you were like got taught all this stuff.
No.
It's so hard. Anyone listening, I dare you, I challenge you to go and try and edit something. It is not easy.
We never done anything like that, and it was the only way I learned to edit was because we had clients who needed videos, and we can't afford an editor, so someone's got to do the edit. And at uni, we've got a short film, and everyone wants to be the writer or the director or the producer or the DOP or even the sound person. No one really wants to do the editing side because that's that last minute bit at the end that you're rushing for and doing.
That is so interesting. I've always wondered how editors end up editing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's probably quite a lot of editors who have taught it. So like if you've done another module at UCLan, which is where I went, they done editing modules as part of the TV production course, I think. Theirs was more technically shown, whereas ours was more, this is how you write, this is how you do experimental film, which are not needed. Yeah. No. I got such a good grade on experimental film. Hated that course because I'm not an experimental filmmaker. I'm not into the abstract. And a lot of film students are. So I see why they do it. And like it got to the point where it's like, okay, we need to do our coursework for it. And I was like, I can't think of anything. And I'm going away to a little holiday place in England with my family. And I was like, you know what I'm gonna cut a hole in my bag. I'm gonna stick a camera in it and put a self timer on it through a remote. so it'd take a photo every second. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do that.
That is so creative. Like, that's really cool.
It's because I had nothing else. I had nothing else to do. Time was running out. I wanted to go on this holiday thing with my family. So I'd done that, put it all together. It's so crap. It's out of focus. It's blurry. It's on most of it's on a train because it's literally train to car to thingy. And like, I remember my lecturer talking to me and I was just like, yeah, I just wanted to show like the journey of man. Or how, it's a piece of showing how we get from this place to that, and all the things that we miss. If you stop on this frame, you might see a horse. When you're on the train, you're not going to see a horse.
Chatting shit.
Yeah. half a film is chatting shit.
Reminds me of religious studies GCSE and RSA level, like. This is why we do that. I love it. And English literature A level as well. You can make up anything. I love it. Yeah. I actually love that side of like education.
It's like, why are the curtains red? Oh. There's no reason why the curtains are red. To be honest, sometimes as I've grown up, I think it's a bit different, but sometimes the curtains are just red. They're just red. They're not anything else. It's especially in student film. It's because these were £1 and the blue ones were £3. We're going for the red. But then when you go there, it's like, no, it's because we want to reflect what's going on through our villain's mind at the moment. And obviously a lot of the time that happens. If you get like a Stanley Kubrick film, everything's just perfectly done. Yeah. When I think about editing, I now do that. Every single thing I edit, there's a reason. And that was something Joe taught me as well, because he always knowledged up, and he was almost like, from his eyes as a DOP, he was like, you could pause any part of our film and you can sort of tell the story within it. And I sort of learned from that bit. So I do get why it happens, but sometimes it is bullshit.
One of my friends at uni studied performance management, and me and my housemate always used to take the piss out of her because we would make up like essay questions. We'd be like, what is the optimum speed of the curtains drawing up at the beginning of a show, or what's the optimum ratio of sweet to salty popcorn in the cinema, or like just make up like really ridiculous questions. But yeah, it's very funny. Anyway, back to you. So you had 3 months of therapy or thereabouts. Was it kind of like an immediate thing automatically just by offloading and sharing kind of your, I guess, issues? What was that healing process like?
To be fair, a lot of it was just, for the first time ever, I felt like I could just vent. Again, part of being a people pleaser and just wanting people to be happy, you don't voice your concerns because you're scared, or you know what, you don't want to upset someone. It's not worth it. And the reality of it is, and again, since listening to like this, to be fair, this podcast has done more for my mental health than any therapist.
In what way? Just the content of it?
I'm sort of in a unique position where, in order for me to make the trailers, I listen to the whole episode and cut the segments. So I have to listen to the episodes. And there were some guests on there that, like Simon Sinek or Mo Gaudat, and what they're talking about, like Scott Galloway, like a lot of these experts, and even with the celebrities as well, like Terry Crews, and like what they're talking about, and you either relate to it or you completely understand what they're talking about. And that's
even Mel C. I was like, everyone needs to listen to Mel C's episode, because I was like, she's underrated.
Yeah, it's incredible. Mel C she was the one I loved the most in the Spice Girls. I always loved Mel C.
I'm a Mel C. She was my favourite as well.
She's
iconic,
yeah. And so like, when she was on, I was excited. I was like, oh, this is cool. But yeah, like that, but it's because they get to vent, or they get to express what they've written about in a way that's slightly different. And because Steve's so interested in them, and he doesn't bring any questions with him to the podcast. He reads a brief, and he does a lot of research, and the team do an amazing job with it as well. But he doesn't come in with questions. he just sort of takes notes and then he just lets the conversation flow. And he literally just asks questions that interest him at the time. So because he's learning, everyone else is learning, because he's just asking the questions that I think many people probably want to ask in that moment.
Yeah. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, in my head, I thought he had like hundreds of questions sitting on his iPad, because I'm like, I wonder what's on that. But I know that there's like research teams and things that obviously there has to be. I mean, he's a busy man. But, you know, it's no secret that I'm a huge fan of his podcast. I think he has inspired me to start my own podcast, and the guests. It's an educational experience. Like, and you know, podcasts are one of those things. I've talked about this a lot recently, actually, that it's not a medium where people can monetize very quickly. It's not like TikTok or YouTube, where if something performs well, you get access to the creator fund. It's kind of like a bit different. So it's one of those mediums where you have to really love it and really want to do it, because it is very, very labor intensive.
Steve don't take anything from the podcast in terms of money. I think he said that a few times, but he genuinely doesn't. And like, the team get to see where the finances go and what's coming in and stuff like that. And it is because he just genuinely loves what he's doing. And the money then goes towards the team and the equipment and stuff like that.
So you are obviously the trailer editor now for Steven Bartlett. How did that gig come about?
It was time for me to move on from my old place. And I wanted to take like a few months off to sort of regain. I sort of got a bit of burnout from it. And then I came across the post at first on Indeed. And I applied for that. But that was very corporate-y. So it was like your online CV and send it through. And then I saw something pop up on LinkedIn. And I was like, I was talking to Helena, and I was like, should I go on LinkedIn? Is that too eager? Is that not, like, what do I do in this situation? Do I send? And then she was just like, yeah, just do it. If anything, it just shows how like eager you are for the role. So I applied for that, and that was the one they messaged me from, was from the LinkedIn one. So I was quite lucky on that front. And then I just had this almost like 2-hour chat with Jack over Zoom about the role, and then he sent me a task to do to make a trailer for. We could choose who we wanted, and I'd done Jordan Peterson, and then he hired me on, and then the rest is literally history.
Literally, you got given a trailer to make. You made the trailer, and then you're in. You got the job.
Pretty much, yeah.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love it?
Ooh. Do I say 10 with the option that life just can't get any better? Or do I say 9 because then it's like, oh, there's always other things you can do? But I'm very, very happy here. You've met some of them today. The team are incredible in every department. I remember the first day I started, actually, as you've probably tell, I know quite a bit about Disney and stuff like that. I quite like Disney. And someone asked, we do a thing where someone new joins and everyone in the team asks that person a question. And someone asked me what the last song was I was listening to on the way here. And I remember and I was like, the last place I worked at, the clients included like Disney and Marvel and Star Wars and stuff like that. And I was sort of known as like the Disney nut. And it's like, it's sort of a thing where it's like, I don't really want to be known as the Disney nut anymore. Like, I want to be a bit cooler than that. So I was like, I'm not going to mention Disney. I'm not going to try and bring it up. I don't want that thing coming up.
Yeah, you're in Steven Bartlett's team. Like, you can't like Disney.
Yeah, I'm cooler than that. So they asked what was my last song, and luckily it weren't a Disney song, but it was quite a cool song. I'm not very cool, as you can tell, so I don't know. But then,
I think you're the coolest person ever.
But Dom, who's Steve's manager, was sat next to me and he leaned over and he was like, what's this Happily Ever After track, which was played before? Or no, it was played next because it was on like
what, did you have to get your phone out to like evidence?
No, because I didn't know what it was. So I was like, let me check, knowing it weren't a Disney song. And I checked it, but the next one in line was going to be like my most listened to one, and it's the Happily Ever After song. Which, if there's any Disney nerds, it is the song used for the fireworks display at the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World. It's the full 25-minute soundtrack, and it makes me incredibly happy because it goes on this whole journey. It's like it goes through bravery, strength, sadness, friends, all that sort of thing, and it's like the perfect timing from Liverpool Street to the office to the studio. So it's like I get the whole thing, and it puts me in a good day.
I absolutely love you for that. That is not many 29-year-old straight men would come on here. I was going to be very careful there, but fuck it. And I can say that. Would come on here and be like, yeah, I listened to a 25-minute Walt Disney song. Yeah. That makes me happy. But I love that. I think more, I cannot bear music snobbery, like when people turn their nose up at like what people listen to, because I love pop. Like I'm like unashamedly like a pop boy, like
pop world.
Yeah, love it. Like Britpop, like Urban Room 2, like I love it. And I can't bear house and trance, and like I'm like of that millennial generation where everyone.
I like songs that people sing and you can sing to, and you can actually dance. Like, and this sounds weird. I like songs where you can dance to the actions. So, cause I can't really dance anymore.
Well, you like Stop Right Now, Spice Girls.
Yeah, that sort of thing. You know what? They're telling you what to do in the dance. They're literally telling you. Tragic, like they're act tragic. It's a but yeah. So so going back to the point of why the team's great is I sort of said it, and then like the team loved that as well. But then Steve was like, "Okay, I've got a task for you. We're going to play the first second or 2 second of a random Disney song. We're going to play 5. If you get 3 right, I'll give you £100." And we didn't have to do the 5 because I got the first 3 right. And
that is so good. And you got £100 on your first day? First day? What were the 3 songs you remember?
The first one was easy. I think it was Be Our Guest, something from Be Our Guest. But basically, the way they done it was they had to scroll. Holly, who you met, I think it was Holly who done it. She had to scroll through the track randomly when it was on pause, press play, and then press. So we didn't know where it was. So it could have been like B or something like that. and it progressively got harder. I think the last one was like Mother Knows Best from Tangled. Oh, wow. And it was what I took ages on it, and I didn't know because I don't know the lyrics of it, but it's like I sort of recognized the tone of the voice, and I was like, what other films are going to be like? And then I eventually got it. So from that day, like, it was just so welcoming, and like that's just how amazing they are. It's sort of like I never liked using the term family when it came to work, and it sort of it sometimes get a bad stigma. And there's like loads of memes and stuff that go on things like LinkedIn and socials where it's like when a job says, oh, you're working for a family, it means they can take advantage of you because you're a family. You do things for your family. So I never really liked using that word, but it is literally the only way I feel like I can explain this group is that it just feels like a big family.
Yeah, I mean, I've been here for an hour or so, and I got the warmest welcome from all of you. The fact that someone just knocked on the door to let you know that they're going and you hugged them all goodbye. But these are like...
I'm known as that.
I've never hugged any of my colleagues goodbye in the evenings. Yeah. But like my point is, obviously, the serious point is that it really does feel like a very warm, loving environment. And I don't think there's anything toxic or wrong with saying that you feel like your work is your family, because work is there, in my opinion, to be enjoyed.
Yeah, it's changed my perspective on it.
100%. You spend more of your time at work than anywhere else, and if you love it, then that's amazing.
And it's like, I sort of started doing this thing where I do like little appreciation posts on LinkedIn for like individual members who have impacted me. I've seen. Love it. And it's because every single person in some way or at some time has done something amazing for me. Like even with being a trailer editor, especially now that it's 2 a week, is a very challenging job.
Is it 2 a week?
Yeah, 2 podcasts released a week.
I'm way behind. I feel like a lot of people are way behind.
Yeah.
There's a lot of episodes for people to get through, and they're not short.
Yeah, and it's a huge ask, and there are times when you have to work late or work to the wire and things like that. And there was a time where that was happening a few times before I was going on holiday, and Jack, who's the producer of the podcast, just came up to me and said, when you're on holiday, I'm going to text you a restaurant, and a taxi's going to pick you up, take me and Helena to this restaurant, and your dinner's on us. And it was like, and at the time, like I was nearly moved to tears. Helena was amazed by it, and it happened this year in August, and it was in Tenerife, and there was this amazing restaurant, one we never knew of. I try and go Tenerife like once a year, sort of like one of my happy places, and I'd never heard of it. And even if I did, it's in this amazing hotel, and I'd be like, I can't afford to stay. I still can't afford to stay. But the restaurant was incredible, and I walked through, and like the staff there were amazing. They took us to the restaurant, they were doing all this, and it was just all to say thanks. And like, if there was a working late one, they got me like a Deliveroo voucher to order takeaway that night. And it's like, it's when you have things like that, you understand. Yeah, social media is 24 hours. We're a small team, which means the workload can be big, and it can be challenging, and it can be quite daunting. But the team behind it are so passionate and literally so talented. Like, there's not one member in the team where you can't not justify why they're there. And that's something they're passionate about, and they talk through in the interview process. They're like, we don't just hire anyone. We're not putting a job out and then we get X amount, we'll put these through. If there's no one right in those 200, 300 people who apply, then that job will stay open, and we'll grind a bit more until we find the right person. So if you work for this team, you're there for a reason. And the reason is that Steve and the team think that you can add something to it that no one else can. To the extent, like with the trailers, what we've done is now sort of being copied or being inspired other podcasts from bigger celebrity. We've had celebrities message us asking for advice or
for your services. Let's call it what it is. They've been praising the trailers because they want you or someone like you to do it for them, right?
I've been asked a couple of times, yeah.
Go on, give me a name.
No, I'm not doing that.
Give me one name.
No, I can't do that.
An initial.
No, I can't. I really can't. I
mean, the trailers are the podcast. Like, people, I don't know, Steve's not here. I've never met Steve. I've met Steve once, but he doesn't know who I am, so it's fine. But like, I feel like the popularity of the podcast wouldn't be what they are without those trailers. Like, they are so important from a marketing perspective to hook people in.
Honestly, not even from like trying to do the imposter syndrome. No, it's not that. It's not. Go away. I can't.
No, I'm going to give it to you harder.
But what a lot of people, obviously, what they don't see behind the scenes in terms of what we do is genuinely that there's so many little things that other people in the team do, which is why the podcasts grow. The trailers, have helped a lot, and the guests love it. And I think one of the reason why Steve's like it is almost because every guest get their own little documentary style trailer. It's something that not many or any podcasts do. So it's sort of like a good little incentive for the guests as well. But like things like the thumbnails, constantly experimenting with thumbnails. We're experimenting with new ones as we speak. The clips.
I'm on the Telegram group.
You're on the Telegram group. Oh, what the?
I vote. I vote for the Telegram for the podcast. I told Steve that.
Oh, sick.
He was like, "What?" Because I feel like I'm in like an exclusive club. So for those listening and don't know, Steve Bartlett for the podcast has a Telegram. Well, there's actually 2 Telegram groups. Mm-hmm. There's like a 30,000 one and there's like a 200 one. And I'm in the 200 one and I think this is amazing, and it's genius marketing, and it shows how important the feedback loop is for him as a creator and for the team, I guess, because every week we'll get sent 4 or 5 thumbnails with a different title as well, right? And we will vote. Like the community will vote. And I don't know. I actually don't follow up as much as I should. But I think he goes with the winning one every time. He's like, you guys voted, and that's what the most popular one is. It's instant market research.
Yeah, Steve is someone who literally wants to keep learning and wants to keep getting better. And this is why I say it's not like the trailers are one aspect for it, but there's so many, like the way Jack's brought in more cameras, or more ways how he uses them cameras, the cuts that he's doing in the episodes is being evaluated.
Elevated.
No, like when you evaluate something, when you test something and then you get the result.
Oh my God.
Evaluate. Oh my God.
He's evaluated it.
This is the problem with me doing podcasts. I can't speak. But yeah, so what he's done, what Liv has done with the clips is incredible. What Grace and the social team has done is mind-blowing. And what they continue to do, the bookings, like at the end of the day, the trailers can be great, the episode can be great, but the guests that we're bringing on are incredible. And we'll see other bigger guests who they'll bring in like a huge name, but then the next 6 won't be well-known people, and they've put all their eggs in that basket. If we bring in a big name, so he's like, right, next big name. So it's like a constant, and then obviously you got like the PR with like Emma and all of that. Like, there's so much that's going on to make this bigger, and like I'm just sort of part of that cog. As much as I would love to take all the credit for how big the podcast goes, it genuinely isn't true. And with that team there is the reason why it's the way it's growing today. And it's just like literally one of my greatest things is that even if it was a small part, I'm part of that team that's making it grow. Learning from all the time. That's what's so
How many
good about it.
trailers have you edited now?
Nearly 60.
Is there one you're particularly proud of?
There's loads.
Top 3?
My top three trailers are Chris Kamara. Just because I'm super emotional, but that was a personal one for me, and the impact the trailer and the episode done for Chris and the footballing world was sensational. There was banners at I think he played for Sunderland, or I think it was Sunderland, and they had banners saying, Chris Kamara, like, we hear you, you're one of our own. And like people were picking up on it. It's almost like it was pretty much an exclusive about him suffering from apraxia. And for me, I love Chris Kamara, and seeing him on Soccer AM and like what he done on Soccer Saturdays, like I don't know Jeff, all that, like he was so animated, and then he just went off the grid. And I remember seeing one punditry of him, and I was like, something's not right here. Like he seems slow, he doesn't seem as animated, and I was wondering what it was. And then I just didn't hear anything, and like you just move on, you forget. And then this interview came out, and I was cutting it, and I was nearly moved to tears just watching it. And I was like, okay, so that needs to come somehow into the trailer. We need to, if I'm crying, I need to make people cry in the trailer. And I cried when I actually made the trailer, and I made it. I was like, me and Helena was watching it, and we were like, yeah, no,
that's amazing.
But,
it's good. I love that.
Yeah.
They're so, like I said, they're powerful. Film is really powerful.
Yeah.
Right, so that's Chris Kamara.
And next time I'm going to be really quick on Lewis Capaldi. Loved doing that one. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, just fun to play around with that one. And then Dame Dash is probably my up there as well.
So that was the night I met Steven, the night before the trailer was released, and he was buzzing about that. He was like so excited about that one. So I wonder if that's actually one of his favorites as well. Maybe.
It's the thing is with the Dame Dash one, and this is why I'm not bored of trailers, is every single we have a bit of we're building the brand with the die, and I want to stick to similar to the brand, but each trailer in my eyes is completely unique. They have similar fundamentals, so a hook, maybe a cliffhanger. Not all of them have cliffhangers, but it'll have a hook, it'll have the intro, then it'll sort of go on this journey. But in my eyes, it's almost like every single one's different. Everyone tells a story. The music, I try my utmost. In fact, I'm pretty sure maybe like 95% of the trailers never reuse any music.
Which is interesting because I spend about an hour trying to find any form of decent sound bed and I can't. So you obviously got a good ear, or you know you're looking in places where I don't know. But I find music quite difficult.
Music's the toughest part.
Yeah, it is.
Because unless you got unlimited, if you're making a film trailer, it's very different. But having worked in that industry, I know how much money they spend just on using someone's voice for a film trailer, and obviously that's not logistical. So the challenge you've got is to look at stock music, and stock music famously is very corporate and things like that. But on average, I'll probably download maybe 35 to 40 music tracks per trailer, and I will test them out and I'll find which ones merge together.
Yeah, how many different tracks do you use in one trailer?
It varies. So my latest one, I think 4. Dame Dash was either 3 or 5, which is quite weird because it's not 4. Some of them have merged together. If they're artists, we'll use some of their tracks mixed with the stock. So it's literally, I've never made a trailer where there's 1 or 2 tracks, because in my eyes, there's not 1 or 2 moments in the trailer. There's not 1 or 2 emotions. I want you to feel happiness, or I want you to feel energetic. I want you to feel sad. I want you to feel angry. I want you to feel like you know something no one else does. I want you to feel all these different emotions. That has to be represented in the music.
That's the psychology again. It's genius. You're so clever. Honestly, it's so clever because let me tell you, as someone who has been making their own trailers, or trying to make what I can call a trailer, you wouldn't call it that. It's not easy stuff to do. Like, it's really difficult to immerse yourself into that artistic process and try and bring human beings on a journey when you're trying to convey a story. It's not easy. So what's next? What's next for you?
Honestly, just like see how far I can help to take like this podcast. If I'm genuinely honest, that's my plan. I just want to do whatever I can to get the podcast the biggest, one of, if not the biggest in the world. That's the aim. And that's, if I can try and do that through the trailers, then that's what I'm going to try and
You're
do.
not far off.
What, the podcast?
Yeah, it's got to be one of the biggest in the world.
I think it's one of the biggest. We're getting a lot more streams in like the US and stuff like, and obviously the US is such a big market, and it's difficult to break into the US because, you know, it's an English host, host with an English accent, and but you know, when we have people like say Dame Dash, he done amazing in the US. When we done our trip to LA, that was US guests, and like that got a high thing. So big as we can, basically. Yeah. And my I'm well up for that journey. I'm well up for the challenge. From my end, my biggest thing is to keep finding that 1% in every single trailer I do, which is 2% a week, which is so far 66% improvement from the first trailer I've done. So he
talks a lot about 1% better every day.
That was the first thing Jack told me about when I started, was Steve likes the 1% rule. If you can try and put that into your work, great, and keep doing it. And it's one of the best pieces of advice I've got, and it is something I genuinely look for. And I sort of said it off camera, I've sort of said it here as well, but because I was never taught editing, I've always had that imposter syndrome that I'm not a very good editor. I still think I'm not a very good editor. If I look at other mates who are freelance editors or anything like that, and they can talk about the high specs or the technical aspects and things like that, and it's like I don't really know that stuff. I'm still sort of learning. After Effects, I didn't know After Effects at all until I started my last job, and then I started doing little bits with After Effects, and now every single project I do uses some form of After Effects, and I'm not even scratching the surface of where After Effects can take it, and that's what I'm excited about, and that's what I'm learning about. So like, for me, finding that 1% is something that I need to do with every trailer, and it's something that someone very nicely, I get really nice comments when the trailers drop, especially on like LinkedIn and Instagram and stuff like that. And every so often I get people messaging me and with really nice words. And someone messaged me the other week and was like, I can see that you're putting 1% extra in every trailer you do. And I thought, okay, that's incredible.
That must make everything so worthwhile.
Yeah.
When being validated,
Yeah.
or just having that kind of feedback loop of someone telling, like, patting you on the back and be like, this is great work. And I'm sure like your team, your bosses, Steven himself will always congratulate you on good work. But when it's being noticed by the viewers or the listeners, like, that must make you feel really special.
Yeah. Whenever they send me those comments, it's amazing. I mean, the imposter syndrome kicks back about 5 seconds later, and I'm like, oh no, now the next one has to be just as good, or they're all gonna hate me, or they're all gonna figure out that I can't edit, and then it's a downhill slope. I'm gonna have to.
Yeah,
find
you
another
need to
job.
work on that.
Massively.
Like, you're clearly a fantastic editor. So we're coming to the end now, and one thing I ask all my guests to do is write a letter to their younger selves or give their younger selves some words of advice. Is that something you've prepared?
No, because, and I'm going to explain why.
Right.
Every single talk that I've done, pretty much anything in life, I famously don't prepare it. I hate preparing for it. I'll think of it, and then I'll maybe do like a little rehearsal on the train or something like that, but I don't want to. It's sort of because it changes every minute. Like, having this conversation has changed what that letter would be to my former self, because it would, if it was this morning, it'd be like, learn everything you can, or don't go to uni, try and get in the industry sooner. You need to do this. It's so hard. You need to figure this out. All these people are more technically advanced than you. You need to figure this out. Whereas now that I've spoken about people giving me nice feedback on what you've said, which is lovely, and like when I was speaking to Liv earlier, and she was like praising the trailer, tomorrow's trailer, the advice is now to like just trust your instincts with it. You don't have to rely so much on the schooling system. You don't have to rely so much on having a set, clear path of where your career is going to take you, because chances are it's going to change. 2 years ago, when I was working for a company that their clients were Disney and Star Wars and James Bond, I was like, oh my God, this is literally the dream. I'm working for like the clients that I've dreamed of working with. 2 years later, I've left.
Was that a production company that you went and worked for?
Social media agency.
Oh, cool.
But they done production as well. And yeah, I thought I was going to be there for the rest of my life. I was like, this is incredible. I left 2.5 years later because life happens and things happen and things get in the way, and you have to change how you go about certain parts in your life. And then now I'm here. I'd never want to leave here. I'm so excited to see how far this can go. So the letter I'd have to my younger self would be to believe in yourself more and figure out why you don't believe in yourself, and try and find that out from a younger age. Because as I get older, I do find it's probably becoming a little bit more and more difficult for me to figure out why. So my biggest advice would be to not take life so seriously and make the decisions for you and not for the other people, because you have no idea where life would have taken me if I made the decisions myself.
I love that. What a perfect way to end the podcast. Anthony, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here, pleasure to chat to you. I could probably be here all day, but yeah, thank you very much for sharing. Yeah, maybe there'll be a part 2. Thanks for being so vulnerable and kind of sharing your life with us.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Bye.
Thank you as always for taking the time out of your day to watch or listen to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did making it. And don't forget, if you haven't already, please leave a rating or a review from wherever you're listening from. And if you haven't subscribed, that would also be greatly appreciated. And you can subscribe on Apple, on Spotify, on Google, and of course on YouTube as well. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you very soon.